In the first week of the Biden-Harris administration, we are seeing an emphasis on racial inequity as, part of the overall message of unity and the president trying to convince Americans that they should unite around the idea that isn't the nation better off when inequity is addressed, and that this is not a zero-sum game. That is a message that I think was aimed specifically at white voters, whether we're talking about the ones who maybe didn't vote for him, or we're talking about the more moderate or liberal voters who are white and did vote for him, but maybe are worried about how this will affect, their children's school or their neighborhood, in terms of issues like housing or education. And so what was interesting, the domestic policy advisor, Susan Rice, whose job is to directly address racial inequality, talked about how this is going to be what she called an unprecedented effort across all of government to look at racial inequity, whether we're talking about the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Justice, the Department of Interior, the EPA. Every government agency is expected to report back on kind of with a baseline of how they are really embodying equity within those agencies, and if they are not, how they plan to get to that. And so, while, again, we're only a week out, if you can imagine, inauguration was only a week ago, this is already kind of the tone that I think a lot of the people that did vote for President Biden, namely people of color and women, this is part of what they voted for in terms of the racial inequality emphasis and also the diversity that we're seeing on display.
Yeah, I want to come back to the politics, but I want to hit you, David Jolly, on the policy. I wonder if you think that, I think what Aaron is articulating is right. This is a reorientation of all the levers of the federal government that a president can pull. I mean, the federal government is in charge of everything. But what he's making clear is that every lever he can pull, he's going to pull in this direction. I wonder if you think, that would always be historic and a massive undertaking. But coming after Donald Trump, it feels like you have to go underground and sort of pull up the damage and then get to baseline and then reach higher. What do you think that task is like coming after Donald Trump?
Yeah, Nicole, you can't put too fine a point on the significance of Joe Biden leaning in on racial equity this week, because, the nation in many ways is not just burdened by racial inequity. We're burdened by too often our inability to recognize it. And certainly under the years of Donald Trump, not only was there an inability to recognize it, but often it seemed there was a deliberate move to ignore it. And so you can never get to the policy fixes that are necessary to achieve equity if you don't acknowledge the equity in the first instance. And so what Joe Biden has done is completely, radically shifted the conversation back to the moral trajectory on which it should be when we talk about issues of race and culture. And I think what will follow will be policies that advance greater equity and access in areas of healthcare, of quality education, ladders of opportunity like home ownership in all zip codes across the country. The shift, though it seems subtle in this first week, culturally within our politics is back to where it should be.
Yeah, and Aaron, I want to follow up on that, and I want to drill down a little bit on the COVID response. It seems that Joe Biden, I take your point about what is owed to the people who propelled his candidacy after he lost the first 3 or 4 primaries. It was Jim Clyburn's endorsement, and it was overwhelming turnout. Mm-hmm. And we really owe, if Joe Biden has a chance to save this country and end the coronavirus pandemic, we owe turnout, we owe black voters the return or the comeback of our country, because it was turning out numbers in South Carolina that delivered him the nomination. It was turning out in the general. It was turning out and voting early. It was turning out voting absentee. And all those margins are made, all those numbers that made history are largely from black voters. And in Georgia, so if we are all vaccinated by the end of the summer and the country can heal, everyone, any political party, any gender, any race, we have black voters to thank for that. But I want to ask you something, because it doesn't feel like that's what animates Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It feels like, and you hear this when Jim Clyburn talked about him many, many months ago. It feels like 11 years ago, but it was probably just one. Is it your sense that this is in his heart and this is what he was always going to do? Or do you feel like he's just always aware of exactly how he became the nominee and the president?
Well, Nicole, I want to back up just for a second to what you point out when you talk about, the black voters that President Biden acknowledged, in his acceptance speech. He understands that those are the people who, got him the primary nomination weeks ahead of schedule, and the ones who mobilized and galvanized and turned out in record numbers, even in the midst of this pandemic that we know is disproportionately affecting Black and brown and Native folks in this country. And so with that said, yes, the inequity, especially around the pandemic, which is, among the 4 crises that the Biden-Harris administration has said they are confronting, is very real. And that is why the pandemic, coupled with the issue of racial inequality, has been, I think, front and center for this administration. And we will just have to wait and see if that commitment goes through as this, 100 million shots in 100 days goal is being tested even in the early days of this administration.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.